was the actor panel that you did last or
Oh
in
my gosh, of course.
2025 or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
and we were in like the early stages of talking. You were like mentioning Saccharine, but weren't saying too much about it. So it's exciting to
Uh,
finally see it
yeah.
come through. So congratulations on the film, and thank you for your time today. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
I'd love to kick off with, and this is something I feel like I just have like a niche obsession with, and
Mm.
that's title card drops. I love when there is a title card that just hits. And the one in Sakharine I loved because the shot kind of sets up the mystery, a little bit of what we're going to see. There's the whole setup of it's great, and then Sakharine drops up. I'm curious to know how much say or how you sort of go about choosing when a title card is going to drop in one of your films.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like for this one, I definitely, because of the tone of the film being kind of, edging into the absurd at
Mm,
points, and I guess the feeling of, or just the idea of taking human ash to lose weight is kind of inherently absurd.
sure.
In the visual language, I really wanted to create the like a world of contrasts in a way,
Mm,
and to kind of convey the beautiful and the grotesque at the same time. And so, yeah, with the title sequence, I definitely wanted something that felt kind of bold and, again, yeah, as you said, kind of pulls you in or makes you lean in a little bit, right? Like with,
mm.
where are we going with this dead body kind of thing. But then with that pop of color and the pink just to
Yeah.
offset and like bring you into that sickly sweet kind of romance that, unfolds as well. So yeah, a kind of a visual contrast,
Yeah.
within that frame. Yeah.
Well, like I say, it pops out and I loved it. And for someone who like has this, like I said, it's a niche thing that I focus on, but this one
Yeah,
was fantastic. So,
yeah.
I love this sort of phase we're in Australian horror at the moment, where obviously you did it with Relic and what the Philippou brothers have done, what Adrian Chirella's recently done with Leviticus, is
Mm.
exploring these really sort of human themes and these darker aspects of humanity, but in a genre format. And I think it's really cool what we're doing in Australia with that. I'm curious to know what the entry point was for you when you were telling the story about Hannah and it's dealing with themes like eating disorders and identity and purpose and things like that. What was the entry point into the genre horror genre for you when creating this story?
Yeah, well, I think horror is most effective when it's drawn from real emotional truth and real emotional like horror in a way. And so I think when you are, crafting the rules of the world and the mythology of the world, I think it's always stronger when you can point back to like the real lived experience. And so
Mm,
for me with this film, I guess I was trying to think about the experience of being in the grips of an eating disorder and how that can sometimes feel like, even though it's happening internally, it feels like there's something external that's taking over, or that,
mm,
it's kind of, yeah, I guess like taking control.
sure, yeah, yeah.
And that almost felt like this idea of carrying a dark passenger or being haunted by some sinister presence. And then that was like the starting point for having this ghost that kind of is so linked to her. Yeah, I would say like it just felt like the right fit to tell the story.
Yeah, I love that when you can kind of find those like horror allegories within those things. I
Mm.
think you do incredibly well, not just in Saccharin, but in Relic as well. I'm curious to know how you sort of created the visual language to show
Mhm.
Hannah's eating disorder, because it's one that I think is confronting to watch, that there is like this horrific element to it. But I feel like you approach it with a lot of empathy as well. Like every time I did watch her struggle with it, I felt really bad for her. And I know that's obviously the intention, but I'm curious to know how you sort of find the visual side of that and how you sort of balance both that empathy and confrontational or the confronting sort of aspects of it.
Yeah, 100%. I think what we tried to do was because it's a film that's told with very subjective, visual
Sure.
language and cinematic language. I feel like we really wanted to express the dopamine highs of that experience and
Mm,
the parallels to her, of course, having a crush on her gym trainer and Alanya as well.
mm,
And so, one of the key montages in the film we kind of called the dopamine montage, where you really get to like lean into the sensuality and like the physical experience of having excess, right, and binging and
sure.
the highs that come with that, but then at the same time like building in I guess the kind of heaviness underneath that, and the
Yeah.
rot and the griminess. So
Mm.
visually we were like, okay, our kind of like visual say like mantra is like candy and grime, like the
Right. Yeah,
combination
yeah.
of those two things. And so it ended up coming together in an almost like slightly new noir in terms of
Mm.
like its lighting and its full embrace of color, but always with this like darkness within the frame as well.
Mm.
And I think in terms of like empathy, yeah, it's I really wanted to show something on screen that is fully embraces the whole experience of having an eating disorder, and of course that's like massively uncomfortable as
Mm.
well. But it's a credit to Midori that the audience comes along on the ride with her, because she has such a kind of effortless, I think, authenticity to like how
Yeah.
she plays herself, like Hannah. And there's such vulnerability that she expresses that you can't help but feel for her.
Yeah, Midori's performance is truly incredible. I do want to ask about it, but before I go there, you mentioned sort of the dopamine montage, and there
Mhm.
is this obviously a strong theme and aspect of the film where Instagram and social media play a huge part of that dopamine release
Yeah,
as well. But
yeah,
there is something I noticed, and I did love this, that Hannah tracks her weight in a with a note and pen. She does it sort of manually with that. I'm curious to
yes,
know, in a world that is so digital and we rely on all that dopamine from the
yeah.
screens, what was the creative decision to have her track her weight loss on the notepad and pen?
Yeah, that's a good question. No one's ever asked me that. I think I did a lot of research into medical students, and
Mm,
on I think it's like Medical Talk or something. And
right.
so much of their, obviously medical school is a huge undertaking and you have to memorize so much, and notes are like a big thing, right? Like, so
Sure.
how they and it's a real kind of social hierarchy, I think, to like who takes
Right.
good notes, and like who's exchanging what, and like the info that you share around, and like the inner circle and stuff. So
Mm,
obviously, Hannah being a medical student, that's such a key part of like, because writing stuff is like better for memory, right? As
mm,
opposed to just like typing or reading it digitally.
of
So I think
course.
it was like an extension of that like she is someone who is obsessively having to write all day, every day, and, rewrite to cram for these exams. And then at the same time has this, kind of notebook of shame that
Yeah.
she's kind of exploring things with
Yeah.
it. And it just felt more personal and like organic, I think,
Mm.
to present it in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a pen and paper person as well. And I think there was something that
Yeah.
clicked with me is that I very much, when it's something I'm so focused on, like tunnel vision focused on, the pen and paper aspect of it is very important. That's so fascinating. Like I said, Midori is fantastic, and I can only assume that Hannah on the page is was evolved to the Hannah we see on the screen with the collaboration with Midori, and I'm curious to know sort of how that evolution, when you first sort of met with Midori and talked about the character of Hannah, how Hannah evolved to what we see on the screen throughout the film.
Yeah, to be honest, through the casting process, I had a pretty clear image of the Hannah that I wanted.
Hmm.
And that was so drawn from, often when you're writing, you're kind of pulling mood boards, and, you really have a sense of like the visual idea of a person and like how they carry themselves. And
Yeah,
I'd seen some of her work, and I just thought, for me, she was like, oh, that's our girl.
yeah,
I think in terms of how she developed, a lot of it you kind of craft together even before you are on set. A lot of it is
mm,
like breaking down the script and like kind of I guess coming up with like a shared language for
right.
how to talk about what the character is going through.
Mm,
But yeah, I mean, we always knew in the way that like a lot of it you find the character through also the costuming and the hair and makeup process as well.
mm,
And we kind of latched onto this idea of a young woman who is kind of hiding herself. And so
mm,
that comes through in a lot of the wardrobe that she wears at the start, but also
sure.
the idea of hiding behind this fringe that
Yeah.
and a lot of it of course is Midori's physicality that she brought to
Mm,
that self-consciousness that she kind of conveys as well. So
yeah.
Yeah, it's a layering process, I'd say. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Oh, and she is truly incredible in it. Do you remember the first time you saw her in the prosthetics that we see her in the beginning of the film? Do you remember that first
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah. And, credit to Larry at Scarecrow Studios, who, we wanted to make sure that we nailed that and made it feel as natural and as,
Mm,
close to Midori as possible because like the worst thing would be to make this film and make it be like a punchline, right? As
sure.
it's so often been in the past. So
Mm,
yeah, I do. And I think like actually her walking onto set and when we did the camera test, like she just kind of like snapped into character. And
yeah.
often actors will just kind of be themselves in front of a camera just for the costume, but she was like fully immersed. It was, yeah, really impressive to watch.
Yeah, she is truly fantastic, and those prosthetics, that work is truly amazing. I read in an interview that you did for the Sundance Film Festival,
Uh,
where you said that you love filmmaking because filmmaking is the avenue to explore big questions you don't have the answers to yet. And I think
yeah,
that's fascinating
yeah,
because that's kind of how I watch films as well. Movies has always been
yeah,
something in my life that has been that avenue into
yeah.
finding regulating emotions or finding out things about myself. I'm curious to know, when did that notion first sort of resonate with you? And do you remember the movie or the first movie you watched where it did kind of feel like it answered one of life's big questions for you?
Ooh, yeah, that's a great question. I think sometimes like it doesn't necessarily need to be often they're like deeply philosophical, but sometimes
Mm,
it can just be as little as um like a shift in perspective as opposed to like an axis tilting kind of
totally.
thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like where you
Yeah.
kind of go, "Oh, that's it's almost like bringing ineffable experiences of life and like giving them physical form. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, I've
Totally.
never been able to like describe that feeling,
Yeah.
and then here it is on screen. Yeah, I'm trying to think back to my earliest experiences. I mean, I would say, as a very young filmmaker, my like top three films were like Mulholland Drive,
Mm.
which again it like captures so much, but like, are there any certain answers in
Yeah.
that film? Not really,
No,
right? It's
no.
kind of just like a feeling that I've had, or like some sort of like it makes lyrical sense, right?
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
Which I love. Also, Train Spotting was another big one, and just
Yeah.
like the language of surrealism that film uses, but it's like aliveness and it's like exploration of characters, I think.
Mm.
And then I have to say, Requiem for a Dream was pretty big for me.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
so heavy to watch now, but of course, as a teenager, you're
Oh,
like, yeah, this is,
when
like
you don't have like loads of life experience as a teenager,
exactly,
Requiem for a Dream is like this stylish, incredible film for
yeah,
Aronofsky. And then you watch it, and like once you go
an
past 30, you're like,
adult.
this is fucked up. Like I don't
What was
like this.
I? Yeah.
I definitely made parallels between things that were happening in Saccharine to Ellen Burstyn's character in Requiem for a Dream.
Absolutely. Yeah. It must have left its mark. Absolutely.
Totally.
Yeah. So I think those three,
Yeah.
yeah, certainly were huge for me. Yeah.
Totally incredible, incredible films. I loved. I'll wrap up on this, and obviously, I read that quote from a Sundance interview, and you got to premiere Relic at Sundance and then Saccharine at Sundance as well. I'm curious to know, what were those two experiences like? Obviously, premiering your first film, and pre-COVID, which is a crazy thing to think about with Relic, but then
Mhm.
coming in now with Saccharine, and you're a couple of movies deep now, and this is getting a theatrical release and whatnot. What were the two experiences? Were they different, or sort of how are you remembering them both?
Oh, so what was really interesting when we went to the Saccharine premiere was that we screened in the exact same cinema
Wow.
as the Relic one. And I remember turning to my crew and I was like, is this smaller? Is this a smaller cinema? So clearly, like when I first went, it seems so much bigger, like physically
Yeah.
bigger, and there's so much like weight around that experience, and it's just a lot of the nerves, right? I mean, it's always
Mm,
nerve-wracking when you first show a film to an audience, but I
sure.
think just in terms of like attaching your I don't know, sense of okayness to like the result of, a screening is like it's so
Yeah.
much more forefront when it's your first film. So I kind of
Mm.
felt that this time that like for me this time, knowing what I was walking into, I was just able to kind of enjoy that a little bit more and just celebrate with cast and crew. Whereas last time you put the weight of the world, and expectations on your shoulders. So yeah,
Sure.
it's kind of joyful.
That's incredible. Look, thank you so much for your time. Like I said, when we spoke at the Actor Fest, when we did that panel, like I'm a horror fan, so it was cool to like pick your brain there. But this has
Oh,
been awesome,
great.
an interview. I really love your work, and I'm excited to see what comes next. I hope we get to talk for. I know you're working on a TV show
Yes.
at the moment as well, so I hope we get to
Yeah.
chat for that. But no, congratulations on the film, and I hope we get to talk again soon. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Always a joy to talk to you as well. So,
Appreciate
yeah.
it.